One of my followers on Twitter, whose name is American Asafo, and shout out to you for tagging me in this post, sent me this article right here, and I said, this is very interesting. It says racial gaps cost the economy $16 trillion, according to Citi. And when I saw that $16 trillion figure, it took me back to a video that came out last year where it was calculating how much in reparations black people should receive from the effects of chattel slavery and everything else that happened after it, leading up to now. And the figure of $16 trillion was what came up. And we believe that to be on the minimum, even though $16 trillion is a lot of money. Hell, $1 trillion is a lot of money. And I'm looking at this and I said, just imagine if they would have just cut that $16 trillion check, this probably wouldn't be a topic of discussion. So it's amazing how things just come full circle. So I'm going to go ahead and read this article. It says racial inequality is bad for the U.S. in innumerable ways, of course, many of which are hard to calculate directly. But now Citi has put a number to at least one aspect of social injustice, finding in a new study that $16 trillion has been erased from U.S. GDP over the last 2 decades due to discrimination. So you're talking about for the last 20 years. So you're talking about from 2000 to 2020. $16 trillion has been erased from the GDP. That's a lot of money. That is more than $1 trillion per year. I take that back. It's less than that. But still, that's a lot of money. The report findings are based on analysis of factors including wages, education, housing, as well as equitable lending to black entrepreneurs. Basically, what they're saying in just that small sentence is if you had true equality, that's why I keep saying equality is a myth. If you had true equality, this figure would not be an issue. This is a huge part of America's debt right here that they don't talk about, because usually when they talk about America's debt, they usually always go back to China. Racial inequality has always been an outsized cost, one that was thought to be paid only by underrepresented groups, said Raymond McGuire, vice chairman of Citigroup and one of the report's authors. What this report underscores is that this tariff is levied on us all, and particularly in the U.S., that cost has a real intangible impact on our country's economic output. The bulk of the lost $16 trillion is based on a lack of lending to black entrepreneurs, which Citi estimates has cost the U.S. $13 trillion in business revenue and 6.1 million new jobs per year. That's what America gets. See, we knew this inequality thing, this injustice, this so-called unfair and unbalanced system was going to eventually kick its own ass. But based on what I'm reading so far, the ass kicking has begun, and it will only continue to get even more intense. Another $2.7 trillion in income has been lost due to the racial wage gap for black Americans, while the lack of access to higher education for black students could have added $90 billion to $113 billion in lifetime income. Finally, a lack of equality in access to housing credit, which could have led to an additional 770,000 black homeowners, has cost $218 billion. So you can see just in what I've read so far alone that, like I said before, most of the debt that's coming from America is them shutting us out from opportunities. From housing to banking to entrepreneurship to education. Like I said, it's about to tilt on its head. I bet them reparations looking mighty nice right about now. Furthermore, the study found that if racial inequality gaps were addressed today, $5 trillion could be added to the economy over the next 5 years. But see, their ego is not going to allow them to do that. Not even have a conversation about it. The report was released in conjunction with Citi's announcement that will invest more than $1 billion in strategic initiatives over the next 3 years aimed at closing the racial wealth gap. Called Action for Racial Equality, it will focus on increasing investments in Black-owned businesses as well as promoting the growth of Black home ownership, among other things. Addressing racism and closing the racial wealth gap is the most critical challenge we face in creating a fair and inclusive society, and we know that more of the same won't do, said Citi CEO Michael Corbat in a statement, while adding that the company is committed to using its resources and influence to combat the impact of racism in our economy. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. This right here is one major component, one of several components as to why the U.S. is in the financial state that it is in right now, because they did everything that they could to shut us out while simultaneously wiping themselves out financially. That's their fault, because we don't control any of the institutions that happens or occurs within America. We don't control none of that. But see, like I said, their ego not only will not allow them to have a conversation about this, but their ego won't allow them to actually fix the issue. They would rather this continue to boil over and just fester rather than actually pay up, or at least do what the article suggested. But see, it's like I said, it's too far gone at this point. It's too ingrained. That's why a palm-colored person could not tell me about institutional racism and systemic racism. They can't tell me anything that I already don't know. But if they do want some more input, they can look to this article, and there's plenty more information out there that will back this up. It's just that now we have a figure, $16 trillion over the last 2 decades. When you think about it, $16 trillion lost over the last 2 decades, that's a lot of money to lose, quote unquote, in such a short amount of time. I'll say that again. That's a lot of money to lose in a short amount of time. Imagine trying to spend $1 trillion in a year. If you can do that, you have a serious spending problem. But I don't know anybody that could do that. Do you know how many billions it takes to get to a trillion? 999 billion. 999,999,999.99. Add a penny in and boom, you got your trillion. But do you know how long it takes to get to that? Look at Jeff Bezos. He's the wealthiest man in the world, and I think his net worth is, I can't even think of it, but I know it's not near that. But at his rate, at the rate that Amazon is going, it could be there. As a matter of fact, I read somewhere where they say Amazon is on its way to being one of the first $1 trillion online based marketplaces. Probably within the next 10 years. I think Apple actually just crossed it as like one of the first $1 trillion companies ever. That's a lot of money. But like I said, $16 trillion lost in 2 decades because their ego would not allow them to spread the wealth. But they want to claim that there is no racial wealth gap or there is no racial problem. It's amazing. They'll put a little graph up when it's talking about proximity crime, because I refuse to label it as what they want to call it. They love to bring up charts and graphs and statistics and studies when it comes to proximity crime. But when it comes to talking about this racial wealth gap, then, it's fake news. They'll probably look at this and say it's fake too. They like, how did you come and arrive to this number? Even though the article broke it down how they got to that figure. And it even broke down how they can get themselves out of the hole. But like I've said, their ego will not allow them to do that. They would rather watch this thing crash and burn. It's crashing, truth be told, it's crashing and burning right now. Look at what's going on in California. That's the burn part. I'm just waiting to see what the crash is going to be. I'm guessing the crash would have been what happened when the woo-woo first started and the stock market crashed. So there's your crash and there's your burn. But I can't wait to see what y'all have to say about this.